One of the sailors was unable for duty, and the mate feared he had the fever. The reports from the hold were growing even more alarming, and some of the patients who were mending had relapsed. One of the women was every moment expected to breathe her last, and her friends, an aunt and cousins, were inconsolable about her, as they had persuaded her to leave her father and mother and come with them. The mate said that her feet were swollen to double their natural size and covered with black putrid spots. At breakfast the following day, I inquired of the mate after the young woman who was so ill the night before. He told me she was dead. When I remarked that I feared her burial could cause great consternation, I learned that the sad ordeal was over, her remains having been consigned to the deep within an hour after she expired. When I went on deck, I heard the moans of her poor aunt, who continued to gaze upon the ocean as if she could mark the spot where the waters opened for their prey. The sick list was now mounted to 20. It was awful how suddenly some were stricken. A little child who was playing with her companions suddenly fell down and for some time was sunk in a death-like torpor. When she awoke, she commenced to scream violently and writhe in convulsive agony. A poor woman who was warming a drink at the fire for her husband also dropped down quite senseless and was borne to her berth. I found it very difficult to acquire precise information respecting the progressive symptoms of the disease, but I inferred that the first symptom was generally a reeling in the head, followed by swelling pain as if the head were going to burst. Next came excruciating pains in the bones, and then the swelling of the limbs commencing with the feet, in some cases ascending the body and again descending before it reached the head, stopping at the throat. The period of each stage varied in different patients, some of whom were covered with yellow watery pimples and others with red and purple spots that turned into putrid sores. The moaning and raving of the patients kept me awake nearly all the night. It made my heart bleed to listen to the cries for water. For God's sake, some water. It was horrifying. Yet strange to say, I had no fear of taking the fever. The mate, who spent much of his time among the patients, described to me some revolting scenes he witnessed in the hold, but they were too disgusting to be repeated. The number of patients upon the list now amounted to 30, and the effluvium of the hold was shocking. The passengers suffered much for want of pure water. On Wednesday, 30th of June, passing the main hatch, I got a glimpse of one of the most awful sights I ever beheld. A poor female patient was lying in one of the upper berths, dying. Her head and face were swollen to almost unnatural size, the latter being hideously deformed. Her cheeks retained their ruddy hue, but the rest of her distorted countenance was of a leprous whiteness. She had been nearly 3 weeks ill and suffered exceedingly until the swelling set in, commencing at her feet and creeping up her body to her head. Her afflicted husband stood by her, holding a blessed candle in his hand and awaiting the departure of her spirit. Death put a period to her existence shortly after I saw her. And as the sun was setting, the bereaved husband muttered a prayer over her shrouded corpse, which, as he said amen, was lowered into the ocean.